My husband stood in our bedroom, screaming that the baby growing inside me wasn't his. He said I'd been sleeping with his brother. Meanwhile, his mistress was downstairs wearing my jewelry, sitting in my house like she owned the place. What he didn't know. Everything he thought was his. I owned it all. Every single thing. My name is Rachel, and before you judge me, before you think you know how this story ends, let me tell you something. The woman they tried to destroy? She was never weak. She was just waiting for the right moment to remind them who really held the power. Stay with me. Because what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. Especially not him. Welcome to Reality Stories Hub. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. You know that feeling when you think you've built something real with someone, only to discover it was all smoke and mirrors? Let me tell you my story. My name is Rachel, and this is about how I learned that sometimes the person sleeping next to you is the one you know the least. I want to take you back to where it all started. Not the bad part. The beginning. The part where I was just a girl with big dreams and calloused hands. I grew up in Birmingham, in a tiny flat with my aunt after I lost both my parents in a car accident when I was 7. We didn't have much. Some months, we had to choose between heating and eating. But my aunt, God rest her soul, she taught me something important. She said, Rachel, nobody's going to hand you anything in this life. You want something? You work for it. And work I did. At 16, I was cleaning offices after school. At 18, I was working double shifts at a cafe while studying at the local college. I learned about business, about numbers, about how to turn an idea into something real. And I had an idea that wouldn't leave me alone. You see, my aunt used to make these natural remedies. Creams and lotions from herbs and oils. When her arthritis got bad, nothing from the pharmacy helped, but her homemade balm did. I watched people in our neighborhood come to her, asking for her mixtures. That's when it hit me. What if I could do this properly? What if I could create a line of natural wellness products that actually worked? At 22, I started my company from our kitchen. I called it Healing Roots. I was mixing ingredients at 3 a.m. before my cafe shift, filling bottles by hand, designing labels on my aunt's old computer, driving around the city in a beat-up car, delivering orders myself. People thought I was crazy. They said, Rachel, just get a normal job. Stop dreaming. But I didn't stop. I couldn't. This was my purpose. My way out. My way up. 5 years of grinding. 5 years of sleeping 4 hours a night. 5 years of hearing no more than yes. But slowly my business grew. First, it was local health shops. Then small chains. Then online orders started flooding in. By the time I turned 29, Healing Roots was making over £1 million a year. I had money. Real money. The kind that meant I could finally breathe. The kind that meant my aunt could retire. The kind that meant I could buy a house. Not rent. Buy. And that's when I met Daniel. It was at a business networking event in Manchester. I was there representing my company, feeling proud in my new dress. Still not quite comfortable in these fancy spaces, if I'm honest. Then this man walked up to me. Tall, confident, with a smile that could light up a room. You're the Healing Roots founder, he said. I've been reading about you. Building a company from nothing. That's impressive. Daniel worked as a regional manager for a pharmaceutical company. He wore expensive suits, drove a nice car, and had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. After years of working nonstop, having someone see me as more than just a businesswoman felt incredible. We dated for 2 years. He was charming, funny, attentive. He'd bring me flowers after long work days. Take me to nice restaurants. Tell me I was beautiful when I felt exhausted and worn down. When he proposed, I said yes without hesitation. I was in love. I thought I'd found my partner, my equal, someone to build a life with. His family, though, that was different. His mother, Patricia, she'd look at me during family dinners with this tight smile, making little comments. Oh, Daniel mentioned you grew up in council housing. How resourceful you must be. Or, it's so generous of Daniel to take care of you now. His father, William, would joke about how I must have seen pound signs when I met their successful son. They'd laugh. Daniel would laugh too, a bit uncomfortably, but he never corrected them. The thing is, they had no idea. None of them did. When Daniel and I got married, I kept my finances separate. My accountant insisted on it. Protect what you've built, she said. My lawyer suggested the same thing. So I did. The house I bought in the countryside outside Birmingham, that was mine. Purchased a year before I even met Daniel. The cars leased through my company. Our lifestyle, funded by Healing Roots. Daniel contributed to a joint account we used for groceries and bills. Maybe £2,000 a month. Everything else, the mortgage, the utilities, the holidays, the nice dinners, that was me. But we told people it was for tax reasons, and nobody questioned it. Daniel certainly didn't complain. He loved our life. Loved posting photos of our house online. Loved telling people about our success. I didn't mind. I loved him. I thought we were building something together. I thought marriage meant we were a team. Then 6 months ago, everything changed. I found out I was pregnant. I remember sitting on the bathroom floor, staring at that positive test, crying happy tears. At 34, I'd built my business. Now I was ready to build a family. When I told Daniel, he smiled. He hugged me. He told everyone we were expecting. Posted it on social media. Talked about being a father. But then something shifted. He started coming home late. Being secretive with his phone. Snapping at me over small things. When I'd ask what was wrong, he'd say work was stressful. That becoming a father was overwhelming. That money was tight. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I was carrying our child. I thought we were in this together. Around my 4th month of pregnancy, Daniel's younger brother, James, started coming around more often. Now, James was different from Daniel in every way. Where Daniel was flashy and loud, James was quiet and thoughtful. He worked as a teacher, lived simply, and never tried to impress anyone. He'd stop by after work to check on me. Bring me soup when I was feeling sick. Fix the leaking tap that Daniel kept saying he'd get to. Help me carry shopping bags when my back started hurting. I was grateful. Running a business while pregnant was harder than I'd expected, and Daniel was never around. I thought James was just being a good brother-in-law. That's all it was. Family looking after family. But Daniel started making comments. Little ones at first. You and James seem close, he'd say, with this edge in his voice. Or, my brother's here again? Doesn't he have his own life? I brushed it off. Pregnancy hormones, I thought. Daniel's just stressed about becoming a father. Men get nervous too. Then came the day my world cracked open. I had an appointment with my midwife. It finished early, around 2 in the afternoon. I decided to go home instead of heading to the office. I was tired, my feet hurt, and I just wanted to lie down. I pulled into our driveway. Our beautiful house with the garden I'd worked so hard to afford. I walked through my front door. And I froze. There was a woman sitting on my sofa. She was young, maybe 26, wearing a designer dress and heels. Flipping through a magazine like she belonged there. She looked up at me, and I'll never forget that smile. Smug. Satisfied. Like she knew something I didn't. I stood there, 6 months pregnant, holding my skin photos, trying to understand what I was seeing. Then Daniel came down the stairs. He wasn't surprised to see me. He wasn't embarrassed. He just looked annoyed that I'd come home early. Rachel, this is Amber, he said, casual as anything. She's a colleague from work. She just stopped by to drop off some files. But Amber wasn't acting like someone dropping off files. She knew where the bathroom was. She had a cup of tea from my kitchen. She was wearing perfume that filled my entire living room. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just excused myself, walked upstairs, and locked myself in the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hand on my belly, feeling my baby move, and I knew. Deep in my gut, I knew. That night, Daniel didn't come to bed. I heard voices downstairs. Laughter. Music playing softly. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd missed the signs. Wondering when my husband had become a stranger. The next morning, I tried to talk to him. Calmly. Quietly. I asked him who Amber really was. And that's when he exploded. He started yelling. Saying I had no right to question him. That I was paranoid. That pregnancy had made me crazy. Then he said something that knocked the air out of my lungs. Everyone knows you and James have something going on. Don't act innocent with me, Rachel. I couldn't even speak. I just stared at him. He kept going. James told me he has feelings for you. Everyone can see the way you look at him. This baby? I don't even know if it's mine. The room spun. This man, my husband, the father of my child, was accusing me of the worst betrayal imaginable. Meanwhile, another woman's perfume still hung in the air of our home. I called James immediately. He was in the middle of teaching, but he could hear the panic in my voice. When I told him what Daniel said, there was silence. Then he said, Rachel, I never said anything like that. Ever. You're my brother's wife. I would never disrespect you or him that way. He sounded hurt, confused, angry. Then James told me something that made everything click into place. 2 months earlier, he'd seen Daniel at an upscale restaurant in Manchester with Amber. When he'd asked Daniel about it later, Daniel said it was just a work dinner. Nothing to worry about. James hadn't thought much of it at the time, but now it made perfect sense. Daniel was guilty, so he was making me the villain. He was rewriting the story, making himself the victim. The worst part, he didn't even have the decency to be discreet about it. A week later, Daniel moved Amber into the guest cottage. Yes, the guest cottage on my property. The one I'd had built with my money. He said he needed space. That we needed to figure things out. That I needed to calm down. Amber walked around my property like she owned it. She'd come up to the main house and take things. My jewelry. My clothes. My car keys. One morning, I looked out the window and saw her driving my Range Rover down the driveway. When I confronted Daniel, he said I was being dramatic. Jealous. Insecure because of the pregnancy weight. Then came the garden party. Daniel decided to throw a summer barbecue. Invited his entire family. His parents, his cousins, his work friends. And Amber played hostess. She used my dishes. My grandmother's serving platters. My decorations. She stood at my grill in my garden, serving food to Daniel's family while I sat there, 7 months pregnant, being treated like a guest in my own home. Patricia, Daniel's mother, actually came over and patted my shoulder. Sometimes we have to know when to step aside gracefully, dear, she said. Let the young ones have their moment. She thought I was the other woman. She thought her son owned this house, this life, this success. They all did. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. I just smiled, nodded, and watched. And inside, something hardened. Something shifted. I was done being the victim in my own story. That night, after everyone left, after Daniel and Amber went back to the cottage laughing, I sat in my kitchen and made a phone call. I called Sarah. She'd been my lawyer since university days, one of the few people who knew every detail of my financial life. We'd studied together, struggled together, built our careers together. She knew me. Really knew me. Sarah, I said, my voice steady now. I need you to pull everything. Every document, every deed, every title, every contract. Everything in my name. Can you do that? Of course, she said. Rachel, what's going on? I'm taking my life back. Over the next week, Sarah and I went through everything. The house, purchased entirely in my name 3 years before I met Daniel. The cars, leased through Healing Roots Limited. My business, 100% owned by me. We had one joint bank account that Daniel had access to, but all my real money sat in accounts he'd never even seen. And that prenup. Oh, that prenup. When Daniel and I got married, Sarah had insisted on it. Just a formality, she'd said. To protect what you've built. At the time, I thought it was unnecessary. We were in love. We were partners. Now, I thanked God for that piece of paper. But then Sarah found something that made my blood run cold. Daniel had tried to take out a loan against the house. My house. He'd forged my signature on documents, claiming we needed money for renovations. The bank had flagged it because the signatures didn't match properly, but Daniel had smooth-talked his way through, saying it was just a clerical error. He'd tried to steal from me. Not just break my heart. Actually steal my assets. Rachel, Sarah said carefully. This is fraud. Serious fraud. We need to report this. Do it, I said. Report everything. I also hired a private investigator. His name was Tom, recommended by Sarah. Former police detective, now working private cases. Within 5 days, he had everything I needed. Photos of Daniel and Amber at hotels across the Midlands. Receipts from expensive restaurants. Credit card statements showing thousands of pounds spent on jewelry, clothes, weekend trips. All from our joint account. The account I'd been automatically paying off every month without checking the details. Tom also dug into Amber's background. Turns out, she had a pattern. In the past 4 years, she'd been involved with 3 other married men. Always targeting men who appeared wealthy. She had a system. A strategy. Daniel thought he was so clever, but he'd been played just as much as I had. The difference was, I actually had something worth taking. I decided it was time to end this properly. I called a family meeting. Told Daniel I had an important announcement. Said I wanted everyone there. Him, Amber, his parents, James. Daniel thought I was finally going to leave. I could see it in his eyes. That smug satisfaction. Like he'd won. Amber showed up wearing my necklace. My grandmother's necklace. Already talking about what color she wanted to paint the nursery after I moved out. Patricia and William came ready to celebrate their son's freedom from the woman they'd always looked down on. James came because I'd asked him to, though he looked sick with worry. Sarah joined us via video call on my laptop. I set everything up in the dining room. Everyone sitting around my table. Then I started talking. I want to make sure everyone understands the situation clearly, I said, my voice calm and clear. So there's no confusion moving forward. Daniel started to interrupt, but I held up my hand. Not aggressive, just firm. This house we're sitting in belongs to me. The deed is in my name only. I purchased it 4 years ago, 3 years before I even met Daniel. The room went quiet. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. The cars outside are leased through my company. In my name. The furniture you're sitting on, the art on the walls, the dishes Amber used last week at the barbecue, all purchased with my money. Daniel's face started to change. His confident smile fading. Daniel contributes about £2,000 a month to our joint account. I contribute everything else. My business, Healing Roots, which generates our entire lifestyle, is 100% owned by me. Daniel has no legal claim to any of it. I slid the prenup across the table. This document, which Daniel signed willingly before our wedding, waives any claim to my premarital assets and my business. Patricia's mouth fell open. William leaned back in his chair, his face going red. But that's not all, I continued. I pulled out the paternity test results. I'd taken one the week before, even though I knew the truth. I just wanted proof. Undeniable proof. The baby I'm carrying is 100% Daniel's. Not that he deserves to know that, but I wanted to prove I have never, not once, been unfaithful. Can you say the same, Daniel? Then I showed them everything. The photos. The credit card statements. The hotel receipts. The forged loan documents. Daniel tried to take out a £50,000 loan against my house using a forged signature. The bank is currently investigating him for fraud. You should have seen Daniel's face. The color drained right out of it. His mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, trying to find words that wouldn't come. William stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Daniel, tell me this isn't true. But Daniel couldn't speak. He just sat there frozen, while his entire world collapsed around him. Patricia kept shaking her head, looking between me and her son. But Daniel always said, "We thought you. He told us he was taking care of you." "He told you wrong," I said simply. "I've been taking care of myself since I was 16 years old. And I've been taking care of him for the past 5 years. I handed Daniel an envelope. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I felt calm, strong, clear. This is an eviction notice. You have 30 days to remove yourself and your belongings from my property. I turned to Amber, who'd gone very pale. You have 72 hours to vacate the guest cottage. Sarah's voice came through the laptop speaker. We've also filed for a restraining order, which will go into effect in 48 hours. Daniel is not to come within 500 feet of Rachel or her business premises. I looked directly at Amber. I know about the others, the 3 men before Daniel. I know this is what you do, but you picked the wrong woman this time. Amber grabbed her handbag without a word. She didn't even look at Daniel, just walked straight out of my house. I watched through the window as she got into a taxi that had been waiting. She was already on to the next opportunity. Daniel meant nothing to her. He never had. Daniel finally found his voice. Started shouting about how I couldn't do this. That he had rights. That I was being vindictive. That the baby was his child too. Sarah calmly explained every legal right I had. That I owned the property. That the prenup was ironclad. That the fraud investigation was real and serious. That if he wanted to contest anything, we'd be happy to present all our evidence in court. A court would also be very interested to hear about the forged signatures, Sarah added. That's a criminal matter, Daniel. Not just civil. William sank back into his chair. Patricia was crying now. Not for me. For her son. For the image she'd had of him. The successful man who'd turned out to be living off his wife's hard work. James stood up and walked over to Daniel. For a moment, I thought he might hug his brother. Instead, he said, "You accused Rachel of having feelings for me to cover your own guilt. You tried to destroy an innocent woman's reputation. Your pregnant wife. I'm ashamed to call you my brother right now." Then James walked over to me. "I'm so sorry, Rachel. I'm so sorry my family put you through this. It's not your fault," I said. And I meant it. The next few weeks were hard, I won't lie. Daniel tried everything. He sent flowers, long text messages, letters saying Amber had manipulated him, that he'd made a mistake, that he loved me and the baby. But I was done. I changed all the locks, had security cameras installed around the property, hired security for my business offices in case he tried anything there. Amber disappeared as soon as she realized there was no money to be had. Last I heard, she'd moved to London. Probably already found her next target. Daniel moved back in with his parents. His fancy pharmaceutical company found out about the fraud investigation and quietly let him go. They couldn't have someone under criminal investigation representing their brand. His reputation in our social circles crumbled overnight. The man everyone thought had it all together turned out to be a fraud in every sense of the word. I went through the divorce proceedings 8 months pregnant. It wasn't easy. Some days I felt strong and powerful. Other days I cried in the shower, grieving for the life I thought I'd have. The partner I thought I'd found. But I never wavered. Not once. Sarah made sure everything was airtight. The house remained mine. The business remained mine. Daniel would have limited visitation rights with the baby once she was born, but only supervised visits until the fraud case was resolved. My business actually grew during this time. Turns out, when you're not supporting a man-child and his mistress, you have a lot more energy to invest in what actually matters. I hired a full management team so I could prepare for maternity leave. I developed 3 new product lines. We expanded into Europe. Healing Roots was thriving in ways I'd never imagined. And 3 weeks before my due date, I did something that surprised even me. I put the house up for sale. Too many bad memories in those walls. Too many ghosts. Every room reminded me of the life I thought I had. I needed a fresh start. A new beginning for me and my daughter. The house sold within a week. For more than I'd paid for it. I made a profit on top of everything else. I gave birth to my daughter on a rainy Tuesday morning in March. 8 pounds, 3 ounces. 10 tiny fingers. 10 tiny toes. And her father's eyes, as much as I hated to admit it. I named her Hope. Because that's what she represented. A new beginning. A fresh start. A reason to keep going when everything else had fallen apart. The midwife asked if I wanted to call the father. I said no. This moment was mine. This joy was mine. Daniel hadn't earned the right to be part of it. He found out 2 days later when his mother saw the birth announcement I'd posted online. He tried to visit the hospital, but the restraining order was still in effect. Security turned him away. James came to visit instead. Brought flowers and a teddy bear. Held Hope gently, tears in his eyes. She's beautiful, Rachel. You did good. We did good, I said. Thank you for being here. For being family when your family wasn't. Those first few weeks with Hope were the hardest and most beautiful of my life. Sleepless nights. Endless nappies. Learning to breastfeed. Learning to function on no sleep. But every time I looked at her perfect little face, I knew it was worth it. I'd bought a new house while I was pregnant. Smaller than the last one, but perfect. A cottage in the Cotswolds with a garden full of flowers and a stream running through the back. Far enough from Birmingham to feel like a fresh start. Close enough that I could still run my business. The cottage needed work, but that was okay. I was building something new. Something that was always meant to be just mine and Hope's. My business continued to grow. The new management team I'd hired was brilliant. They handled the day-to-day operations while I focused on product development and strategy. Healing Roots opened its first standalone shop in London. Then another in Edinburgh. Then Manchester. We launched in France. Then Germany. Then across Europe. The little company I'd started in my aunt's kitchen was becoming something bigger than I'd ever dreamed. And the money, the real money started coming in. Not just comfortable money. Generational wealth money. The kind that meant Hope would never struggle the way I had. The kind that meant I could give back to my community. Start scholarships for young women from council estates who wanted to start businesses. Daniel's fraud case went to court 6 months after Hope was born. He pleaded guilty to avoid jail time. Got 2 years probation. A permanent criminal record. His career in pharmaceuticals was over. No company would touch him now. I didn't feel happy about it. Just sad. Sad that he'd thrown everything away. Sad that Hope would grow up knowing her father made these choices. But I made sure she'd know him. Daniel got supervised visitation once the restraining order expired. Every other Saturday for 4 hours. His parents would bring him to a neutral location. He'd spend time with Hope while a social worker watched. I did this not for Daniel, but for Hope. Because she deserved the chance to know her father, even if he'd failed as a husband. Being a parent is about more than biology. It's about showing up. It's about character. It's about love. Daniel, to his credit, never missed a visitation. He was trying in his own broken way. He'd made terrible choices, but Hope was innocent in all of this. As for me, I found peace. Real peace. Not the kind that comes from revenge or justice, but the kind that comes from knowing your worth. From building something real. From being strong enough to walk away from what doesn't serve you. James remained a good friend. He met someone, actually. A lovely woman named Claire who taught at his school. They got married last summer. Hope was the flower girl. It was beautiful. People ask me if I'll ever date again. If I'll ever trust someone enough to let them in. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe someday. But right now, I'm focused on raising my daughter and building my empire. Hope is 3 years old now. She's smart, funny, strong-willed, just like her mom. She loves helping me in the garden. Loves visiting the Healing Roots shops. Loves hearing stories about her great-aunt who taught me to never give up. The cottage is finished now. Painted yellow with white trim. Garden full of herbs that I use for product testing. A swing set in the back garden where Hope plays for hours. This is my life now. The one I built from nothing. The one nobody can take away. Sometimes I think about that day in the dining room. When I laid out all the evidence. When I watched Daniel's face fall as he realized everything he thought was his had always been mine. I don't think about it with anger anymore. Just clarity. I learned something through all of this. Something important that I want to share with anyone listening. Know your worth. Protect what's yours. Build something so strong that nobody can shake your foundation. Be so solid in who you are that when people try to diminish you, they just look foolish. And most importantly, never let someone else's betrayal make you doubt your own strength. I went from being the woman whose husband accused her of cheating, to the woman who owned everything he pretended was his. I went from heartbreak to healing, from victim to victor. But here's the real truth. I was always strong. I was always capable. I was always enough. Daniel didn't make me strong by betraying me. I was already strong. I'd been strong since I was 7 years old and lost my parents. Since I was 16 and working 2 jobs. Since I was 22 and mixing lotions in a tiny kitchen at 3 in the morning. All Daniel did was remind me of what I'd always been. And for that, in a strange way, I'm grateful. Not grateful for the pain. Not grateful for the betrayal. But grateful for the clarity. For the reminder that I don't need anyone to complete me. I'm already whole. As I sit here in my garden, watching Hope chase butterflies, I think about where I've been and where I'm going. Healing Roots is on track to open 50 stores across Europe by next year. I've been invited to speak at universities about entrepreneurship. I'm writing a book about building a business from nothing. And Daniel? Last I heard, he's managing a small chemist's shop in Wolverhampton. Living in a flat above the shop. Still trying to rebuild his life. I don't wish him harm. I don't wish him suffering. I just wish him gone from my story. Because this story isn't about him anymore. It never really was. This story is about a girl who lost everything and built it all back with her own 2 hands. About a woman who was betrayed but refused to be broken. About a mother who is raising her daughter to know her worth from day one. This story is about me. About hope. About healing roots. About the life we're building together. And it's a beautiful story. Maybe not the one I planned, but beautiful nonetheless. So here's what I want you to remember from all of this. When someone tries to take what's yours, make sure they know exactly who they're dealing with. When someone tries to rewrite your story, hold tight to your truth. And when someone tries to make you small, stand so tall they have no choice but to see your strength. You are not what happened to you. You are how you survived it, how you grew from it, how you refused to let it define you. And me? I survived. I grew. I refused. I'm still here. Still standing. Still building. Still strong. And I always will be. The end.